Yeller, episode 2 of the Always Rosier Show, and this is a banger, guys. I know I'm a bit biased. I'm probably going to say that every time, but this one's really good. We got Eric and his wife. They're in their 40s. They just quit their job 6 months ago. They lived here in the Bay Area in California, and they are now in Malaysia, traveling the world with no end date in sight. And I mean no end date. They've retired. They got 1.1 million in the bank. And they did all of this without having some crazy six-figure job while living in the Bay Area. Neither of them had six-figure jobs, but they cut back on their spending and they saved. They executed on their plan. I mean, it's really that simple. They came up with a plan eight years ago, and 8 years, that's not that long of a time. Yeah, they were saving a little bit before then, but they really came up with a plan 8 years ago and started executing on it. So it's never too late, guys, but it's better if you do it early, and hopefully you learned some things from this episode. Maybe it's motivating. Comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your feedback. Without further ado, let's jump into the interview.
So we got rid of all our stuff except for basically what fits in 2 backpacks, and we are going to travel for pretty much as long as it's fun, which could be a really long time.
Wow.
We have no set plans to end the travels anyway, that's for sure.
That's awesome. How old are you guys?
I am 42, and my wife Katie is 41.
Congratulations right off the bat. I mean, it's amazing. It sounds like you're living the dream. At least for me, it sounds like you're living the dream. When did you guys start planning this whole, fire mentality? Or was there a date that you can remember when you started?
Yeah, I kind of remember almost exactly when I figured out that fire was a thing. We had moved to California, there to the Bay Area from Chicago, and it was actually like in the middle of the Great Recession, the Great Financial Crash there, and I ended up taking a job at some factory as an accountant,
Okay.
and I only had 2 weeks vacation. And coming from Chicago, where I had 5 weeks of vacation, it felt like I had nothing.
Yeah.
And so over the course of basically needing to go to work every single day and never getting a day off, I started, searching around the web, and eventually I stumbled upon Mr. Money Mustache's an interview he did in the Washington Post, and man, it was just like a switch was flipped.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, I mean, we I don't know, we never wanted kids, so the idea of an early retirement was always kind of there, but we had no idea how accessible it really was until I found that and really started digging into it.
So that was what, like 10 years ago, 11 years ago?
That was, maybe a little less than that. I think it was 8 or 9 years ago, yeah.
Okay, cool. And then I imagine, did you go pretty deep in Mr. Money Mustache?
Oh yeah, at that point I read every single post that he had ever made in chronological order.
Nice.
And it gave me a ton of motivation to I had kind of a long commute, so it gave me a ton of motivation to find a new job, one where I could ride my bike to work. We actually ended up switching apartments not too long after that too, to a cheaper one that was in a more central area. So we both we both reduced our commutes, saved money on rent, and things like that. And,
Yeah.
kind of started cutting out restaurants. We finally opened IRAs for ourselves because we hadn't been doing that before, and just like a bunch of big changes.
Nice. So do you have like a before and after, like what you were spending before and then after all the changes, what your spending was?
I really don't have a before spending because I was just more like a normal person where I never even really considered it that much. I mean, we were still saving, we were always contributing to our 401ks,
Yeah.
And things like that, but really not much else besides that. But then of course, once I found that, then we started tracking our spending. And I mean, even just the act of writing it down, I think really helped curb any urge we had to waste money, or at least we looked at it like wasting money for the first time, maybe.
Right. Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Honestly, they have, there's all these different budgeting apps now, Mint, YNAB, Every Dollar, and all of them have these, if you read through the the homepage of their website, it's always like make budgeting easy, and you know the most seamless app to get things done as quick as possible. And we just use the free version of it's called Every Dollar. It's Dave Ramsey's. But it's the free version, so it doesn't have any of the integrations with your bank accounts or anything like that. So we're forced to manually enter every transaction, and exactly like you said, like the action of doing that is.
Yeah, that's what I did too. Except, I mean, I just use a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
You know, like so I like nothing's integrated. I type it all in. But honestly, you know, like I mean, if you do it like every day or every other day, I mean, or even really every time you spend some money, I mean, it takes like 5 seconds.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know, like it's really not that big a deal.
Yeah, for sure.
I keep it up now, you know, like I've been doing it for, well, close to 10 years now, and it's
nice.
I mean, it's like become a part of my life.
Yeah.
You know, I know where every dollar goes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's not a chore. It's fun.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Was there a lot? Did you guys have a lot of like stress and anxiety about finances at all before the recession, or you were just kind of living normal? And how'd you think about?
No, not really. I mean, we've always, you know, I guess had good luck. You know, neither of us lost a job voluntarily or involuntarily or anything like that. You know, we've changed jobs over the years, but it's always been on our own terms. So, you know, we had an opportunity to move to California with Katie got a promotion, so we decided to take it because we always kind of, coming from the Midwest, we always wanted a little bit better weather.
Yeah.
And definitely the Bay delivers on that. So.
Yeah. I feel like it's just the dream. I grew up in Detroit, and California was just like this mystic, like, dreamland. You know, it's like you gotta go there, but I don't know where that maybe there's got to be media and all kinds of stuff that talks about it that way, but
movies.
Yeah. But
I mean, it really does feel that way, especially from, you know, if you're in the Midwest. I feel like for whatever reason.
Yeah, which it actually is kind of the dreamland coming from that kind of weather. I mean, the weather here is crazy.
Yeah.
So 8 years, or let's just call it 8 years, or you know, whatever the case may be, from no real, you know, definitive plan to then retiring. Would you say, like, so you said you were putting away towards? Well, first off, you mentioned in your email, you know, you didn't have any huge tech salaries. Are you comfortable? Are you willing to share what your salaries were?
Sure. I mean, I never made more than $50,000 until I was like 37 years old, and neither of us ever hit 6 figures.
Yeah.
So, you know, and especially out there in the Bay Area, I mean, we were not in the, I don't know, you know, a lot of people make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Put it that way, you know. We were nowhere near that, but you know, just really we did a pretty good job of not spending it, and of course, you know, the stock markets. We had a pretty good luck with that, I guess. Not that I picked stocks or anything, but just the timing of our investments and everything. You know, kind of right about when we got serious about fire was, you know, when the markets really started to go up for a long time. So
right.
That definitely nudged us in the right direction.
That makes sense. So what would you say your savings rate was, or do you have an idea what that was for those 8 years?
You know, that's a good question. I never actually sat down and calculated my official savings rate. I know that's like a big thing in fire circles, but I never really saw the point.
Yeah.
Mostly just looking at raw dollars, you know. But I mean, you know, especially near the end, I mean, I feel like we continue to earn a little bit more money every year, it seemed like, and we actually continue to spend a little bit less, like as we became more frugal or got, you know, as Mr. Money Mustache would say, we flexed our frugality muscles a little bit more, you know.
Right.
So, you know, it was somewhere 50 to 60% near the end, I think, but it definitely wasn't that high the whole way. You know?
Yeah, makes
Especially
sense.
at the start, it was maybe, you know, 15 to 20% for the first decade of our working careers or something like that.
Makes sense. So together, let's call it. So are we talking maybe saving like 50 grand a year, something around that ballpark?
Yeah, we were around 70-ish.
Okay.
Right when we quit, so we were earning, you know, we were earning around I mean, our last couple of years, we were definitely earning the most money we ever had. It was somewhere around 165,000, and we were putting away about 75,000 a year.
Nice.
You know,
That's awesome.
some of that's pre-tax, obviously.
Yep.
So that changes the calculation a bit, but so it's not like we were poor. That's a pretty good salary still.
Right.
So I'm not saying that, but of course, compared to a lot of my coworkers, I didn't make much.
Yeah.
But or my neighbors or whatever, right? So.
No, yeah, I totally get it. And honestly, I push back hard on people. I read the headlines. Obviously, I made a video showing I only make 65 grand, and all the headlines always say like you need 250,000 minimum to be average in the Bay Area, and honestly, I don't feel that it's that big of a gap. If you just get your spending right. I mean, I see how you can inflate it pretty quickly and how you can get to feeling like you need that amount, but I don't see it. I mean, if you just figure it out and work on it, then
I worked with some people that probably spent more on housing than I spent for everything.
Right.
In a month.
My
total monthly budget was less than their housing budget. You live in a pretty small space, right?
Right.
Our apartment. Well, we cycled through a couple, but I think our biggest apartment was 550 square feet or something like that.
Yeah.
It was pretty small, but
Yeah.
there's only two of us and shipping it.
Yeah. And so was that a one bedroom? Did you have separation?
Yeah, no, we never lived in any studios. We've always had at least a separate bedroom.
I think our quality of life goes up living in a smaller space, just overall. I don't know. And, there's obviously a limit there. Like, once you get to a certain size, it becomes extreme. And obviously, now that we have kids, it starts to get even more difficult. But anyways, that's been a big mind shift for me. Is like, before looking at the square footage as, oh, I need this much square footage, and now it's like, why? I don't know where I got that idea that I needed that much square footage to live a quality life. I don't know. So, anyways, enough about me. Did you have a fire goal in mind as far as what you needed from a number standpoint, and what the withdrawal rate is on it?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not going to say I had an exact set number. I mean, my budget that I figure we need to be able to travel around the world on is about $36,000 a year. Mm-hmm. That's why I decided ahead of time. Having never done it, it's a little hard to come up with the actual budget.
Yeah.
How much it costs to live abroad and do everything. But after doing a lot of research, I came up with the number about $36,000 a year. So at the 4% rule, that would mean we'd need $900,000 as a minimum, basically.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not, without making it too technical, it's not that I don't believe in the 4% rule, but it's more like I don't think you should set your withdrawal rate based on a strict number. I think you should set it based on market conditions and the current price to earnings ratio of the stock market's somewhat high, and that necessitates a little bit lower withdrawal rate to me. So because of that, we set our fire number a little bit higher. Like it was actually just about $1 million, or a little over $1 million.
Interesting.
But it turns out our spending so far has been way less than $36,000 on pace for. I mean, we're probably on pace to spend about $26,000.
Wow.
So, and the markets also had been basically went up by about 15% or so between the time we gave our notice and the time we actually quit. So we ended up with almost like 1.1 million, and now we're on pace to spend about 67,000. So
nice.
our actually working out, even though we're not expected it to be. But I mean, we've still only been out here traveling for about 5 months. We haven't had to. Neither of us have been sick or had to get medical care. or replace a laptop or a phone or anything like that. So I'm sure that number will go up, the spending, but at the same time, we're still like, from the initial starting point, we'll have plenty of money for a long time. We won't really have to earn any money if your withdrawal rate's that low, right? So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so is that the backup plan in your mind if things started turning south, that you would go back to work or just do whatever you need?
And I wouldn't just sit here and spend my portfolio down and up, but at the same time, I think the actual backup plan, the preferred backup plan at this point would be to find a cheaper place to live and just hunker down and spend even less money.
Yeah.
Because we've been moving around, we've been, going to museums and temples and flying a lot, and if things really, went in the shitter and the markets really started sucking, I think a better option for me would be to, find some really cheap place and just kind of hunker down for a while.
Yeah, makes sense. How do you think about healthcare? How does that work?
We purchased it's like a kind of a combo health insurance, travel insurance policy. For the two of us in our early 40s, it costs about $1,000 a year.
Wow. Is that for each of you?
No, that's combined.
Wow.
So, and that doesn't cover us in the U.S. So if we go back to visit or whatever, we have to buy like a catastrophic policy or something, temporary thing to cover us while we're there. But yeah, I mean, I have a very high deductible on that for this. It's $5,000,
okay.
Which probably also doesn't seem very high either.
No.
But the thing is, like, actual healthcare costs here abroad now this is all anecdotal evidence that I've read, but I mean, it seems like you can go see a doctor and it's like $100,
yeah.
Or like if you need a prescription, it's a few dollars, right? I mean, so I really don't. It almost feels like I'm kind of wasting my money here, like $1,000 a year, because I don't think I'd ever hit the $5,000 deductible.
Fair.
But if it ever comes to that, we get in a car accident or taxi,
yeah.
when we're riding in a taxi or something, or something happens, then we'll probably be pretty glad we have it. But
yeah.
I think for the most part, the plan is just to pay. You just pay out of pocket. If we ever hit the $5,000 deductible, then we have coverage.
Yeah.
Above that, but.
Wow, that's amazing. And do you guys plan on coming back to the U.S. in the future?
I mean, our families are still there. We have friends there, obviously, so we'll be back to visit from time to time. I can't say how often necessarily, but depending on life circumstances and where we are. I mean, honestly, the flight across the Pacific to Asia, I'm in Malaysia right now. So the flight across the Pacific is just, is grueling. It's brutal. So we want to try and minimize that, so we're not flying back and forth all the time,
sure.
Obviously. But we also want to explore, Central and South America and Europe and many places. So we'll be around, and I'm sure that'll include stopping back in the U.S. to see our families and friends and stuff too. So.
Yeah, man, that sounds exciting. Are you? How about 20 years from now? Like, do you guys think that far out?
Sure. I mean, we've kind of kicked it around a little bit. I mean, honestly, at this point, we're pretty new to it. We've only been traveling for about 5 months, but we're really enjoying it. So I think, no real set plans. At this point, we're kind of just, let's see what happens. If we're still enjoying traveling, then we'll just still be traveling. I mean, we might go to more like a home base type thing where we kind of move between, say, 3 to 5 to 6 cities or something, or areas in the world that we really like.
Mm-hmm.
When we get older, just so you have some familiarity and whatnot, or maybe not. I don't know. It's all up in the air right now.
Yeah, that's exciting. Do you think now? Do you ever miss working?
Oh no.
All right.
No, not a chance.
So how about, does it feel like, so obviously you had kind of 8 years where you were reading, drinking the Kool-Aid a bit, and really, I mean, I can relate to that myself, and really internalizing the dream of, firing, and now that you've done it, does it? Man, it sounds like you just got a real Malaysia downpour. Is that rain?
One second here, Alex. 1 second. My lovely neighbors just lit off a bunch of fireworks there. So firecrackers. It's the middle of the day, so I'm not really sure what the point is. But hey, okay. So
that happens to us in Chinatown here in San Francisco. So I know the
yes.
feeling. I thought it was rain though. Don't you get big downpours in Malaysia?
Oh yeah. We definitely can get that too. Pretty much rains every day. It's pretty much rained every day that we're here, but it's usually in the afternoons or evenings, and it's kind of like scattered thunderstorms type thing. So,
Yeah.
but no, that was firecrackers. Okay, so you were saying I couldn't hear half your question.
Yeah.
So after 8 years of reading fire blogs and really diving into it, go ahead after that.
Yeah. So after kind of drinking the Kool-Aid and really internalizing the dream of firing, do you feel like now that you're doing it, the reality matches the expectations?
I mean, no, it's better.
Nice.
It's better than I thought it was going to be. I mean, honestly, like, I don't know. You sit there in your cubicle and you dream about all this stuff. But I mean, right now I feel so far removed from work. I haven't worked for 6 months only. And you hear a lot of people like with a backup plan that, I'll just go back to work, and maybe this has part to do with the fact that I'm not living in the same spot. I'm not going out to lunch with former coworkers or anything. Like my life is just completely different than it was when I was working, obviously, right? So because of that, I mean, I just cannot imagine going back to like I'm so far removed from work right now. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And that's just a great feeling. I mean, it really is. Like I barely thought about it even during this last, at least few months for sure. Like it's totally lived up to my expectations for sure.
Well, that's kind of the flip side. Like you always read the horror stories of people, who had this dream all along for all these years and then do it and are just miserable. But like you said, typically, well, I don't know about typically, but sometimes those stories are they're staying local and then they realize everybody else is working and I'm the only one who's not, and I can't find any friends and things like that. So, I mean, yeah. Have you always had kind of a travel bug?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, our actual plan to like travel full time didn't necessarily. We wanted to retire early before we figured out what we wanted to do when we retired early. But we've always liked to travel. Katie worked for a hotel company for her whole career, and so we've always had easy access to cheap or free hotel rooms, and spent a lot. Most of our discretionary spending came in the way of travel when we were still working.
Yeah.
So this kind of life I think suits both of us very well.
Yeah, it sounds like it. That's awesome. Did you ever consider a career change? Like, do you think that being an accountant was the right career choice for you, or do you feel like maybe there was a mismatch there that really pushed you then to want to pursue fire? I mean, obviously the end there with the 2 weeks of vacation, didn't help. But how about like career in general? Do you ever think about that?
I don't know. To be honest, I never really gave a whole lot of thought to my career, even while I was in it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was mostly just a job, one that I could do and was semi-skilled at. So that's just what happened, just try to build a decent life outside of work.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Honestly, changing careers sounded like too much work.
Yeah. So being an accountant, do you feel like that helps you now manage your money? I mean, I would say it kind of helps with the budgeting, at least to some degree. Some people are so foreign with numbers that just the concept of budgeting is terrifying to them. But how about with the investing? Do you do all of the investing yourself, or is it just, mutual funds? And how does that work for you?
Yeah, I mean, well, I do love a good good spreadsheet, Alex. And I definitely being an accountant helped with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I handle all our own investing. I mean, I have a finance degree actually. I never even had an accounting degree.
Nice.
But I just work. They're trying to do something fancy. They're trying to beat the market. They're paying attention to their investments every single day. Checking their balances and everything else. And man, I think that's just with some experience here and having invested for close to 2 decades, I think that's just a complete wrong way to approach it. Like, really, you just want to set it up and forget about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
At least for me, I mean, if tinkering with it is not a good idea.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think that method suits your personality just based off of what you've said thus far. I do the same thing personally, but it also, even just the anecdotal and the personality match, I mean, if you read best practices, they all lead to that actually gets you the best return doing this method. I mean, yeah, every once in a blue moon, there'll be some, fund manager that comes along that consistently beats the market, but how are you going to actually find those people before they do it? Like, it's, yeah.
And the other way I thought about it was this, is that, let's say I go to work all day, I come home, and I spend 10, 15, 20 hours a week trying to beat the market, and I don't.
Right.
What a waste of time that was. Not only am I out the money, I just wasted all my time.
Yeah.
And it's like my time away from work was extremely precious, as I'm sure you know.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, that's the last thing I want to do when I'm home from work, is try and squeeze out an extra few percent, especially because I'm probably likely to fail.
Yeah. How about on the broad scheme of things, like looking at trends? Obviously, you mentioned PE ratios. Are you thinking about timing in a cyclical way, or you're just gonna stick with the plan even with the information that you have and the background you have, knowing what PE ratios mean and that they are relatively high right now?
I mean, I'm not planning on adjusting my asset allocation in any way. I mean, I know some people in the fire community like the idea of a bond tent, where you start out with a much higher percentage of bonds and then decrease that until you have a much higher percentage of stocks.
Yep.
But in a lot of back testing I did, using the fire calculators like C-Fire Sim. You're familiar with that one, or Fire Calc or whatever. I like C-Fire Sim personally because you can export all the data and really dig into the results and see, like, year by year what the portfolio values are, not just the ending value, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so through a lot of back testing, I kind of feel like 70-30, 70% stocks, 30% bonds is a decent sweet spot, at least for me, where I can accept a reasonably large drop in the market without panicking necessarily.
Yeah.
But to your question, overall, business cycle type thing, I mean, am I expecting a recession? Yeah, maybe, but I'm not gonna I won't combat that by changing anything in my portfolio necessarily, but being travelers here, we can combat that by, like I said, spending less money or just moving to cheaper places, like where we can have the exact same quality of life, but just in a different location, and end up spending less money. So we have a lot of flexibility when it comes to that. So I think we're pretty well set up to weather a lot of storms just by choosing a location.
Yeah.
Like, we don't even necessarily have to, cut spending and not have fun type thing. We just do it somewhere that's not as expensive.
Yeah. But even just the mindset, like that was the transformation for me, diving into the community and realizing, if I learn how to control my spending, it doesn't even have to be extreme, like you say, but at least knowing that you're not at the mercy of, some external force that's just forcing you to spend money, knowing that you actually have that in your wallet to pull out whenever you need it. Like, say there is a recession, say your portfolio gets cut by 30%. Like, you can cut your spending by 30%, no problem, and you'll still be fine with it. So I don't know, it's just such a big deal once you change from having to spend money to being okay with just living your life. And I don't know, that was a big transformation for me. And obviously, I think that was me falling into a lot of just society's pressures and the amount of advertisements and my own insecurities about using stuff to kind of combat those insecurities, and then that compounding with me not being married and being concerned about marrying somebody who then was compatible with that type of mindset. But once you have all those pieces and you communicate it, then it's just so freeing to know that you have that other option. It doesn't have to be the income side of things. I mean, obviously you'll hit a limit eventually, but it sounds like you guys have plenty of cushion.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, between we can control our spending for sure, and like I said before, our withdrawal rate's pretty low right now.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the twos, whatever. So that gives us a pretty nice cushion as well.
Yeah. Also, the other thing, a huge thing is not being locked into a mortgage or any sort of fixed housing.
Yeah, I think my actual fixed expenses right now are somewhere around $50 a month.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's like my cell phone bill and things, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we have a lot of flexibility.
And was that a concerted, or was that like a decision you made when you moved to California not to buy, or was it just not in the cards to buy real estate?
Well, I mean, in hindsight, if we would have bought something right when we moved out there, it probably would have worked out really well.
Fair.
But, I mean, having never lived there, not really knowing if we were going to like it or if we wanted to stay, or we moved out there without much of a long-term plan. So it was like, well, let's find a place to rent and do it and deal with that. But, I mean, really, yeah, again, in hindsight, if we would have purchased something when did we move out there? The winter of 08, 09, I mean, it probably would have turned out pretty well.
Yeah.
You know what real estate prices are like around there. But,
right.
That's totally fine. We were happy living. I've always kind of liked being a renter for the most part. I'm not a guy who wants to mow the grass or fix the roof or anything like that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but I think that mentality, a lot of people will get locked into this, like, again, it's the same thing about spending, but I have to own. If I'm not owning, then I'm not, there's some sort of, like, I'm not living up to society's definition of success, where if you're comfortable with that sort of flexible life, and they like the, being grounded in that. Anyways, to your point, I think, yeah, having that understanding that it's okay to live a different life and have that flexibility, I think is an interesting take, at least for people out there who are thinking, like, how can I do it? What are these different pieces? And then psychologically, once it's time to do it, what are going to be my barriers and what are some things that I'm going to have to cope with? I don't know, maybe that's too much to think about, but maybe a takeaway from your story is just how flexible it seems like you are.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we had plans to stay in the Bay long term, like for the rest of our lives, we probably would have stretched to buy something somewhere at some point, because eventually the math says that owning will beat renting if you're going to be there, in the extreme long term, many decades.
Right.
In the Bay Area, many decades. I mean, I think when I did the math, we would have needed to stay like 25 years to break even. Versus owning versus renting, because renting is just so much cheaper in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, wherever you live, if you live somewhere else, that calculation could be completely different.
Yeah.
But in the Bay Area, for sure, as long as if you're not planning to be there for the extreme long term, it sure seems like renting is the better choice. Especially, like you're willing to move in a small space.
Right.
If you don't need the 3 bedrooms or the 2-car garage or whatever. I mean, it's definitely a lot cheaper to rent.
Yeah. Cool. So what's next for you guys? Where are you headed next?
We're in Georgetown, Penang right now, Malaysia, and this is our first Malaysian stop. So from here we're going to Malacca, Malaysia, which is south on the coast as well. From there to Kuala Lumpur. We're going to spend a month in each of those spots, and that'll be our 90 days that we get in Malaysia. And then from there, we're going to head back to Thailand, and we'll spend Christmas and New Year's in Chiang Mai. So we haven't been there yet. So we wanna try that out. And that's about as far as we have planned, which is actually pretty far. This is as far in advance as we've had any plans
Nice.
for a while. So it's.
Man, sounds like fun. I'm excited for you guys. One last thing, just a general kind of question before, well, three questions that I'm curious about. First, you mentioned Money Mustache. Any other resources? You also mentioned some of the calculators. Any other resources that really were helpful for you in the preparation or stand out in your mind?
I mean, I'm sure some people are probably familiar with this, but we talked somewhat about investing and like the investing mindset. And I think Jim Collins, who blogs at jlcollinsnh.com, is one of the great writers about distilling the stock market and investing into simple concepts that just about anyone can understand. He has a stock series that is, I mean, I think it's worth reading for everyone. I mean,
Cool.
that was. I just think he does a great job, and I'd recommend that to everyone.
Awesome.
Other than that, the calculators that, I like the C-Fire Sim. I'm sure there's better ones out there nowadays. I mean, there's so many people working on this stuff. It seems like there's a lot more people in the fire community now than there were even 5 years ago, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I definitely like Jim Collins' writing. I think he does a great job. I mean, if you need motivation, Mr. Money Mustache was. I mean, I just can't. I love him so much. I mean, he literally changed my life.
Yeah.
I mean, between giving me the motivation and like just opening my eyes to everything that was out there and yeah. So no,
That's amazing. Yeah, and honestly, I like to keep it very. I think this stuff, when you distill it down, it's so simple. And people like to complicate it and come up with all these different things. But like, the only reason I'm doing this, honestly, is just maybe my voice will just add some sort, will resonate with somebody else where, Mr. Money Mustache or whoever, his voice didn't resonate with them. I don't know. But whatever the case may be, just having another voice out there saying basically the same stuff, that just the same basic principles, that is all you need really it's not rocket science to get this figured out. And lastly, I assume I already know the answer to this question, but did you ever dabble in any Bitcoin?
No, that would not be for me.
I saw that one coming, but I had to ask. I'm sure my audience is going to trend younger, so I just had to put that in there. Cool. Well, thank you.
Yeah, well, hey, if they want to see what the fire life is like and see what world travel, if they're interested in travel, I do write a blog. It is bonusnachos.com. It's mostly about my travels and stuff. There's a little bit of fire stuff, but I wouldn't really consider it a fire blog, other than sometimes I touch on what fire has allowed me to do, which is this world travel. So
awesome.
a lot of good pictures and whatever else. So
cool. Yeah, and I'll link that down below, obviously. And I checked it out myself. It's just that extra little motivation. I love it. I love it. Cool. Thank you so much, Eric. It was nice meeting you, and I wish you the best of luck, man.
All right, man. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, have a good day. So there you go, guys. That's Eric and his wife, and they're traveling Malaysia at just in their 40s. They've already retired after living in Bay Area in California, and it's possible, guys. If you want to do it, if you want to live a life with a little bit less financial stress and anxiety, just come up with a plan and start executing on it.